The Galactic Council chamber buzzed with tension, a vast dome filled with representatives from every corner of the galaxy. Each alien species, distinct in form and presence, filled their designated areas, towering insects clicking mandibles, aquatic beings in floating orbs of water, and others whose forms defied terrestrial comparison entirely. The air was thick with the hum of countless languages, all unified by the Council's universal translator. This was the epicenter of interstellar governance, where decisions affecting entire star systems were made. From the high, sweeping arches hung holographic banners representing peace and order, ideals the Council was meant to uphold. But today, those ideals were under threat. At the center of the chamber hovered a colossal projection of the apex predator, a beast so terrifying, its mere image seemed to pulse with menace. The creature, with its sleek, scaled body, rows of jagged teeth, and predatory eyes that gleamed with unbridled aggression, had ravaged ecosystems on multiple planets. No known species had managed to subdue or even contain it. Attempts to capture the predator had ended in disaster, leaving behind only ruins and casualties. This creature moved like a shadow and struck like a storm, unstoppable and unyielding. Its latest rampage had left 3 planets in chaos, and the Council was now in crisis. Voices clashed in a cacophony of panic and frustration. One reptilian delegate hissed about a failed containment attempt that ended with half their task force devoured. Another, a gelatinous being, quivered as it recounted the destruction of their environmental manipulation drones, crushed effortlessly by the predator's brute strength. The room resonated with tales of failed subjugation, each more hopeless than the last. A 4-armed ambassador slammed a fist on the table, demanding answers, but none came. The sense of despair was palpable. The apex predator was more than a mere threat, it was a symbol of the Council's impotence against true, raw power. In the midst of the uproar, a human representative stood quietly at the edge of the room. Humans, new to the galactic scene, were still regarded as an oddity by many. The delegate, a woman in her early 40s with sharp eyes and a calm demeanor, listened intently. She waited, allowing the chaos to run its course before stepping forward. Her presence was barely acknowledged at first. Humans had yet to earn their place in the Council's hierarchy. To most, they were upstarts from a backwater planet with nothing substantial to offer. Yet, she exuded a quiet confidence that seemed out of place in the sea of despair. When she finally spoke, her voice cut through the noise like a blade. "We can tame it." The room fell silent. Heads turned, and multiple pairs of eyes, compound and otherwise, fixed on her with disbelief. The idea was laughable. A ripple of incredulous murmurs spread through the assembly. The human's proposal seemed not just audacious but absurd. A sinewy insectoid, flicking its antennae in disdain, clicked its mandibles. A hulking quadruped with crystalline skin let out a rumbling growl of derision. For a moment, it seemed as though the human would be drowned out by laughter, but she held her ground. She elaborated, explaining that humans had centuries of experience dealing with apex predators on their own world, creatures once thought untamable. She cited examples of lions, wolves, and even great aquatic beasts that had been studied, trained, and, in some cases, integrated into human societies. The human capacity to observe, adapt, and coexist was unparalleled. Her tone was measured, her gaze unwavering as she laid out a plan that was as much about understanding the predator as it was about controlling it. Skepticism radiated from every corner of the chamber. The human representative was met with a barrage of questions, thinly veiled insults, and outright dismissals. How could a species so newly inducted into the galactic community hope to succeed ere others had failed so spectacularly? What arrogance led humans to believe they could accomplish the impossible? But she stood firm, calmly addressing each concern, outlining how human methods differed fundamentally from the blunt force tactics that had been attempted thus far. It wasn't about subjugation, she explained. It was about symbiosis, a mutual respect born from patience and keen observation. She spoke of behavioral conditioning, environmental control, and, most importantly, the human ability to bond. It wasn't just science, it was intuition, something humans excelled at despite their technological shortcomings. The Council's laughter slowly died down, replaced by a begrudging curiosity. Here was a species that, while primitive in many ways, had an undeniable tenacity. Finally, the council's leader, a towering figure with an array of bioluminescent appendages, raised a limb for silence. Its eyes, deep and ancient, studied the human representative with a mix of skepticism and intrigue. After a long pause, it spoke. "If you fail, the consequences will be dire, not just for your species, but for the stability of this entire council. Are you prepared to accept this responsibility?" The human nodded without hesitation. "We are." The leader's bioluminescence pulsed thoughtfully before dimming in acquiescence. The decision was made. A human would attempt the impossible. For the first time in centuries, there was a glimmer of hope, albeit fragile and precarious. The council session ended, but the weight of the decision lingered heavily in the air. All eyes were now on the humans. They had asked for this chance, and soon, they would have to prove that their confidence was not misplaced. The wild card had been played, and the galaxy waited with bated breath to see if humanity could tame the untamable. The human representative stood before the council, eyes steady as she began to outline the plan. She spoke with a quiet certainty that caught the room's attention, detailing how humanity's unique strengths would be the key to taming the apex predator. Adaptability, empathy, and a deep understanding of psychology would be their tools, not brute force or coercion. She explained that humans had evolved alongside dangerous predators and had learned not just to survive but to coexist. This wasn't about overpowering the creature, it was about reaching an understanding, something no other species had considered. The council members listened with varying degrees of skepticism. They had seen failure after failure, each attempt more desperate than the last. Yet, there was something in the humans' calm resolve that gave them pause. Despite their doubts, they agreed to let the humans proceed, though their approval was laced with reservations. The stakes were high, and the risk of failure loomed large. Back on their ship, the humans began their meticulous preparations. They pored over every scrap of data available on the apex predator, its hunting patterns, territorial behaviors, dietary preferences, and even the cadence of its movements. Unlike the other species that had faced the predator with advanced weaponry or containment fields, the humans focused on understanding the creature's psychology. They noted how it responded to threats, what triggered its aggression, and what, if anything, seemed to pacify it. Every detail was a potential key to forming a bond. They used a combination of advanced simulations and virtual environments to model interactions, allowing them to predict and plan for various outcomes. Their technology was innovative but not excessive, wearable sensors that could detect subtle changes in the predator's mood, drones that emitted calming pheromones, and a specialized suit that protected the wearer while allowing for maximum mobility and nonverbal communication. This suit, lined with adaptive materials, could change texture and color to mimic the predator's environment, reducing the human's perceived threat level. The approach was holistic, blending technology with a profound respect for the predator as a living, thinking entity rather than a problem to be solved with force. They prepared a series of tests, each designed to incrementally build trust, starting with distant observation and gradually moving closer as the predator's comfort increased. Central to their strategy was the concept of scent-based recognition. Humans understood that for many predators, smell was a primary sense for identification and communication. They developed a method to safely introduce the human scent to the predator in a non-threatening way, using a blend of synthetic pheromones that mimicked those of the predator's natural prey and companions. The goal was to create a baseline of familiarity, a first step toward trust. Alongside this, they employed nonverbal communication techniques, using controlled body language to convey calmness and submission, behaviors that the predator would recognize as non-threatening. The human also trained extensively, not just in the mechanics of the plan but in the patience and resilience required to see it through. This was as much a psychological battle as it was a physical one. She rehearsed the slow, deliberate movements that would be necessary, practiced the steady breathing that would keep her calm under the predator's intense gaze, and drilled every possible contingency. The emphasis was always on patience, progress would be measured in inches, not miles, and any sign of aggression from the predator would be met not with resistance but with understanding. the human would back off, regroup, and try again. The bond would be formed on the predator's terms, not forced upon it. The council watched these preparations with a mix of fascination and skepticism. They were unaccustomed to such an approach. Their own efforts had been straightforward and forceful, each failure marked by a refusal to adapt or consider alternative methods. This human approach was almost alien to them, soft, slow, and based on principles that seemed far removed from the high-stakes urgency that had driven their own attempts. Yet, there was an undeniable logic to it, a method in the apparent madness. Where other species saw the predator as a monster to be vanquished, the humans saw it as a creature bound by instinct, one that could be understood and, in time, reasoned with. As the human suited up for the first live encounter, the weight of the plan settled on her shoulders. Every tool, every piece of technology was ready, but the success of the mission hinged on her ability to connect with the predator on a fundamental level. She knew the risks: one wrong move, one misinterpretation, and the consequences could be fatal. But there was a quiet confidence in her, born from the rigorous preparation and the belief that humans could succeed where others had not by simply being what they were, adaptable, empathetic, and unafraid to face the unknown with an open mind. With everything in place, the humans stood at the threshold of the predator's enclosure. The council watched, a silent audience to what could be either the first step toward an unprecedented alliance or another in a long line of tragic failures. The human took a deep breath, steeling herself for what was to come. This was the moment of truth, the culmination of every hour spent planning and every risk calculated. She stepped forward, crossing the invisible line between the known and the unknown, driven by the hope that understanding could bridge even the most impossible gaps. The human stepped into the controlled environment, a vast enclosure painstakingly designed to replicate the apex predator's natural habitat. Towering rocks, dense foliage, and dim lighting created an atmosphere that felt alive with hidden dangers. Every shadow seemed to pulse with the creature's presence, and the air was thick with the scent of damp earth and raw power. The human's heart pounded, but her face remained impassive as she advanced, each step deliberate and measured. The apex predator appeared from the shadows, a living nightmare of muscle and predatory grace. Its scales shimmered like dark armor, each movement fluid and lethal. Razor-sharp claws scraped the ground, and its eyes, cold and calculating, locked onto the human with an intensity that made the air seem to crackle. For a moment, they simply stood there, sizing each other up. The apex predator, accustomed to being feared and unmatched, was poised to strike. Its growl rumbled through the enclosure, a low, resonant sound that spoke of hunger and dominance. Every muscle in its massive frame tensed as it prepared to unleash its fury on what it perceived as just another challenger. The human, dwarfed by the creature's sheer size and power, stood her ground. She could feel the eyes of the Galactic Council watching from the safety of their observation rooms, each delegate holding their breath, expecting another catastrophic failure. The human knew that any sudden movement could trigger an attack. She moved slowly, her posture relaxed, avoiding direct eye contact, a sign of aggression among many predators. Instead, she mirrored the predator's movements subtly, taking a step to the side as it shifted, maintaining a respectful distance. She carried with her a small offering of food, carefully selected from the predator's known preferences, and placed it gently on the ground between them. The creature's nostrils flared as it caught the scent, eyes flickering with a mix of suspicion and curiosity. The human's heartbeat quickened, but she forced herself to remain calm, every motion carefully controlled. She began to employ techniques honed through countless hours of study and rehearsal. Her movements were deliberate, each one designed to signal that she was not a threat. She made soft, rhythmic sounds, simple tonal cues that mimicked the calls of creatures in the predator's environment. She kept her breathing steady, even as the predator circled closer, its tail lashing against the ground in a display of pent-up aggression. There was a moment when it bared its teeth, a clear warning that it could end this encounter in an instant. The human didn't flinch. Instead, she slowly extended her hand, not to touch, but to show openness and vulnerability, an unspoken gesture that defied the predator's expectations. The predator's initial aggression was palpable, its eyes burned with a fierce intensity, and it snapped its jaws as a warning. Yet, there was a hesitation that hadn't been there before. It sniffed the air, its head tilting slightly as if trying to make sense of this new interaction. The human's unorthodox approach had thrown it off balance, presenting it with something it had never encountered, a creature that did not challenge it, did not flee, but instead stood with a calm, patient presence. Slowly, it lowered its massive head towards the offered food, testing the waters. For a brief, heart-stopping moment, the predator seemed to decide. Its muscles coiled, and it lunged, not at the food, but at the human, a blur of scales and fury closing the distance in an instant. The council members gasped, many expecting to see the human torn apart in a matter of seconds. But the human stood firm, eyes locked on the predator, her body language unyielding yet non-threatening. She made no move to defend herself, no attempt to retreat. Instead, she held her ground with a quiet confidence that spoke volumes. The predator stopped, inches away, close enough that the heat of its breath washed over her. Its jaws were open, teeth glinting in the low light, but it hesitated. For what felt like an eternity, the predator and the human were locked in a silent standoff, a test of wills that transcended words. The human didn't flinch, didn't break eye contact. She exuded a calm that seemed almost unnatural in the face of such imminent danger, a calm that was neither born of foolishness or bravado, but from a deep, unshakable belief in her approach. The predator's snarl softened into a low rumble, not of anger, but of curiosity. Its eyes, once filled with the promise of violence, softened ever so slightly. It backed off, not in defeat, but in what seemed like contemplation. The first signs of curiosity and recognition flickered in its gaze, a tentative bridge between instinct and understanding. It returned to the food, this time eating slowly, its movements less guarded, as if acknowledging the human's presence not as an adversary, but as something else entirely. The council watched in stunned silence. This was the first time anyone had gotten this close without bloodshed, the first time the predator had shown anything other than pure hostility. The human had not only survived the encounter but had reached a pivotal moment ere the predator's aggression had given way to curiosity. The human remained still, allowing the predator to adjust at its own pace, reinforcing the bond with every calm breath she took. There was still a long way to go, but this was a start, one built on trust rather than fear, on mutual respect rather than domination. As the predator finished its meal, it lay down a few feet away, still watching the human but without the predatory edge that had defined it moments earlier. The human remained where she was, maintaining her posture, her breathing steady and slow. The tension in the air gradually eased, replaced by a quiet understanding that hung between them. This was not yet a victory, but it was a significant step forward, a glimmer of hope in what had seemed like an impossible task. The human had done what no other species had managed, she had earned a moment of the predator's trust, and with it, the first real chance at taming the untamable. The apex predator, once feared and untamable, now stood beside the human with a demeanor that was almost serene. Its towering form, which had once moved with relentless aggression, now exhibited a quiet strength, its muscles relaxed and eyes watchful but calm. The human gave a series of simple, deliberate commands, gestures and cues that they had practiced meticulously. In response, the predator moved with surprising fluidity, following the instructions without hesitation. It lowered its head in a clear sign of submission, a gesture that no one had ever witnessed from this creature. The predator even allowed the human to touch its scaled hide, a moment of connection that was as profound as it was unexpected. The human's approach had succeeded where all others had failed. This wasn't just taming, it was a mutual understanding built on respect. In the observation chambers, the Galactic Council members were spellbound. The Grand Hall, usually a cacophony of voices and debate, fell silent as they watched the scene unfold. Representatives from countless species, each with their own history of failed attempts and losses to the apex predator, stared in awe. The once chaotic and untamable force now responded with a calmness that defied everything they knew. The human had accomplished what the most advanced technology and military might have failed to achieve. This wasn't just a triumph over the predator, it was a demonstration of human ingenuity, patience, and an ability to connect that was unmatched in the galaxy. The initial reactions were a mix of disbelief and astonishment. Some council members whispered in hushed tones, unable to reconcile what they were witnessing with their previous assumptions about humans. A few shook their heads in disbelief, convinced that this had to be some elaborate trick or fluke. But as the moments passed, and the predator continued to respond obediently to the human, the reality of the achievement set in. One of the council's most prominent figures, a representative of a warlike species known for their brute force, sat in stunned silence, his usual bluster replaced with an expression of uncharacteristic humility. Another representative, known for her species' technological prowess, stared wide-eyed, her respect visibly growing as she observed the human's gentle yet firm approach. There were murmurs of admiration, with some council members expressing genuine awe at what had been accomplished. The consensus began to shift from incredulity to admiration. "Unbelievable," muttered a delegate from a species known for their cunning and strategy, shaking his head in grudging respect. "They did it without a single weapon," another voice chimed in, a note of wonder threading through the words. For the first time, the idea that humans could offer something unique and valuable, something beyond their physical or technological capabilities, took root in the minds of the galactic representatives. However, not all reactions were purely positive. A few species viewed the success with a hint of jealousy, their pride stung by the realization that a younger, less experienced race had achieved what they could not. Whispers of resentment flickered through the assembly, with some questioning how such an underestimated species could have outdone them so thoroughly. But these sentiments were overshadowed by the undeniable success that unfolded before their eyes. The evidence was irrefutable, and the council's perception of humans began to shift irrevocably. The official acknowledgement came swiftly, as the council's leading member, an elder of great influence, rose to address the chamber. "This event marks a turning point," the elder announced, her voice echoing through the hall with a weight that silenced even the murmurs of dissent. "The human representative has demonstrated an extraordinary capability that transcends mere strength or technology. This accomplishment speaks to the resilience, adaptability, and ingenuity of humanity. It is a reminder that the value of a species cannot be measured by power alone." A formal recognition was bestowed upon the human representative, a ceremonial gesture that solidified the achievement in the annals of the council's history. The human's calm acceptance of the accolades was met with respectful applause, and for the first time, humanity was not just seen but truly noticed. The implications of this were vast. The council members, each representing powerful and influential species, now viewed humans through a new lens. No longer were they just the newcomers, the lesser species struggling to find their place. They were now a force to be reckoned with, one that had proven its worth not through conflict, but through understanding and perseverance. The successful taming of the apex predator became more than just a singular achievement, it was a symbol of humanity's potential. It hinted at the broader role humans could play within the council, not as subordinate members but as equals with a unique perspective to offer. There was talk of involving humans in more critical decisions, of consulting them in matters of diplomacy, strategy, and even interspecies relations. Their ability to bridge gaps and find common ground, as demonstrated with the predator, was a skill that could prove invaluable in a galaxy often divided by conflict and mistrust. As the session concluded, the human representative was approached by various delegates, some offering congratulations, others extending invitations for future collaborations. The atmosphere had shifted from one of doubt to one of opportunity, with humans at the center of it all. For humanity, this was more than just a victory over a predator, it was a declaration of their place in the galaxy. They had shown that they could not only survive but thrive, bringing new methods and insights that could change the course of galactic affairs. In the days that followed, the story of the human and the apex predator spread throughout the galaxy, a testament to what could be achieved through resilience and an open mind. Humans, once overlooked and underestimated, had claimed their place not through dominance but through the simple, profound act of understanding. And in doing so, they had laid the foundation for a future where their voice would not only be heard but sought after, a future where humanity could stand among the stars as a respected and valued member of the galactic community. The once feared apex predator now moved in harmony with the human, a formidable pair that embodied a newfound alliance between two seemingly incompatible beings. Where the predator had once inspired dread, it now symbolized a powerful bond, with the human leading the way in their interactions. The council chamber buzzed with an energy that hadn't been present before, as representatives from every corner of the galaxy observed the human and predator side by side. The predator's presence, once a source of chaos and fear, now served as a testament to human capability. This was no longer just a beast, it was a living symbol of human influence, an emblem of the unexpected power humans could wield within the Galactic Council. The transformation of the predator from an untamable force to a controlled ally was more than just a personal victory for the human, it marked the beginning of a shift in the galaxy's power dynamics. The Council's members couldn't ignore the significance of this alliance. The predator had become an emblem not just of strength, but of the potential that humans brought to the table, an influence that could no longer be sidelined or underestimated. The human stood calmly beside the predator, a silent reminder that strength was not always about domination but could also be found in understanding and cooperation. The ripples of this event began to spread rapidly throughout the galaxy. Word of the human success reached far-flung planets, and species that had once viewed humans with skepticism now began to reconsider. Delegations from various worlds started to approach humans with requests for assistance, seeking their unique perspective on issues that had long plagued their civilizations. Whether it was solving disputes, managing unruly wildlife, or even exploring uncharted territories, humans were increasingly seen as valuable problem solvers. Their reputation as adaptable and innovative thinkers was solidified, and their status within the Council began to rise. The Galactic Council, previously dominated by species that had long held the reins of power, now found itself looking to humans for leadership in unexpected ways. The once newcomers, often dismissed or patronized, were now recognized for their ability to think outside the conventional bounds of the Council's established norms. Humans became sought-after advisors, their unconventional approaches and fresh perspectives breathing new life into the Council's often rigid protocols. This newfound respect translated into greater influence and opportunities for humans, marking the start of a new era where they were no longer just participants in the galactic dialogue but key contributors shaping its future. As the human and the predator continued their journey together, there was a growing sense of anticipation in the air. The success of their alliance hinted at larger, more complex challenges ahead. The galaxy, after all, was vast and unpredictable, filled with threats and mysteries that no single species had yet mastered. The Council had its share of hidden tensions and unresolved conflicts, each a potential flashpoint that could test the stability of this new, precarious order. There were whispers of old rivalries resurfacing, of ancient enemies stirring in the shadows, and of uncharted territories that held dangers unknown even to the Council's most seasoned explorers. In the face of these looming uncertainties, the humans' quiet confidence served as a beacon of hope. The Council knew that the road ahead would not be easy, and that this success was merely the first of many trials that would require the unique strengths humans brought to the galactic stage. The alliance with the Predator was just the beginning, a demonstration of what could be achieved when fear was replaced with understanding, and when force was balanced with wisdom. As the human gazed out at the assembly of species before her, there was a sense that this was only the start of humanity's rise. For the first time, humans were not seen as a threat or a challenge to the existing order, but as a bridge to something greater. Looking forward, the human could already see the outlines of future challenges on the horizon. There were new frontiers to explore, diplomatic bridges to build, and conflicts that would inevitably call for the same blend of courage, ingenuity, and empathy that had tamed the apex predator. The galaxy was watching, and the human was ready. The lessons learned from this triumph were just the first steps in a longer journey, one where humanity would continue to prove its worth, not just through might or technology, but through the unique ability to connect, adapt, and thrive in the face of the unknown. As the human and the predator exited the council chamber, side by side, there was a palpable sense of a new chapter unfolding. The council, the galaxy, and even humanity itself stood on the cusp of change. The human success had sparked a flame of possibility, one that would light the way for future endeavors. And as they disappeared into the corridors of the great galactic station, the murmurs of anticipation followed them. The stage was set for new adventures, and the galaxy was eager to see what humans would accomplish next. This was only the beginning of humanity's story among the stars, and their influence was poised to grow far beyond anything the galaxy had yet imagined.